The worst year for a lot of us for our mental as well as physical health. So joining us this morning is best-selling author, coach, and fitness expert, Lisa Goldenthal.
Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa G, your host. You're at the top of your game, yet the game is changing faster than ever. Strategies that got you here aren't the ones that'll keep you here. The pressure is relentless, and the fear of obsolescence looms large. That's why I'm here. Welcome to the new podcast series, Disrupted: How to Be Gritty and Unlock Performance. This is your chance where I sit down with today's tops in business, mindset, wellness, and success to help you master disruption and thrive.
Thanks for coming, and I'll see you soon.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. He's an author, speaker, and resilience strategist whose extraordinary journey from Ivy League scholar to prison inmate and back to a place of purpose and leadership has inspired thousands. He's the author of Becoming Ken, One Black Man's Journey from Ivy League to Prison and Back Again, a gripping memoir filled with hard-won insights on truth, transformation, and the human spirit. He's also the founder of Denali Fundraising and Strategic Partners, a sought-after keynote speaker on trauma, redemption with integrity through powerful storytelling to lead with authenticity, navigate adversity, and create a lasting change. Welcome to the podcast, Ken Miller.
Well, thank you, Lisa. I'm thrilled to be on here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, me too, because as soon as I heard about you, your story inspired me on fire. So let's jump in with that. Can you take us back to your beginning of your story? What led you from Ivy League education, incarceration, and how did that shape the man you are today?
Well, I'm a product of my childhood, as many of us are, and
Right.
young adulthood.
Yes.
I'm 62. I was born in 1962. My mother was a white female teenage runaway,
Okay.
and she ended up associating with a gentleman, a black male, who was a drug dealer and pimp. And she got pregnant and put me up for adoption at birth. So as a mixed child, I was put into the foster system, and I did 6 years as a foster child.
Wow.
At age 6, I was adopted. And at the time I was adopted, which was really interesting, I couldn't read, I couldn't write, I couldn't tell time, I couldn't even tie my shoes because the foster parents probably weren't investing that much time or energy into teaching me those items. I got adopted by Irene and Sam Miller. My mother taught me to read that first summer. I never forget phonetic cards, TH, PH, and that's how I learned how to read. Fell in love with reading. I was precocious as a child, and by the time I was 17, I was a National Merit Scholar. I was accepted to Harvard, and I went off to Dartmouth after growing up in Anchorage, Alaska. So I'm an Alaskan through and through. Went off to
Wow.
Dartmouth. I got a degree in fraternity with a minor in drinking, which is not recommended.
Funny.
It came out and went into the corporate world, 3M, Kodak, in sales. But within 2 years, I relapsed, and I was to spend the next 20 years homeless or incarcerated for literally the next 20 years. So in 2007, I was released after my third prison term, and I had no skills. Went into warehouse work, and then as I got well, I went back into the white collar world. I was into management and became a development director. I was in the fundraising world, and that began my journey back as a business owner and also as a contributing member of society. So that's the we call the 40,000 mile view or 40,000 foot view of my story. So
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, thank you so much for being so honest and sharing that. I feel like our audience can really learn from your vulnerability, and I really appreciate that you were open and honest about that. And I would love to know a couple of the key takeaways and lessons learned from that experience. Like, how
Number
did
one.
that shape you as a person?
So lessons learned from that experience. So let's talk about the experience of being a street level drug addict. So I was addicted to crack cocaine and I'm an alcoholic. And so I literally was the individual on the corner panhandling. That was me with an Ivy League education.
Wow.
I was also a hustler. And what that means, I hustled and I was a run in between to drug dealers. And I also was a prostitute. That's what I did. I was a male prostitute on the streets. Did that for many years, among other things, armed robbery, kidnapping. It's a bunch of things I got into. And that's the life of the streets. But what are the lessons that are learned from the streets and the lessons learned from prison? And I learned some, believe me, I learned some. One,
Okay.
I learned, and this is something that's difficult in the corporate world many times, is I learned respect. And I learned how to respect another man. And again, this is because it's a male dominated world. Obviously, prison is all male. And then the streets, at least the individuals I dealt with were men. But I learned respect. I learned how to understand a person's position or stature within a community. That's what you're respecting. And then the other one, many lessons I learned, but another lesson that I learned to be the person I am today, which is a kind and gentle man, is that I learned to take away the power of the secret. And because I had a secret, and the secret was my prostitution. That was my secret. And I didn't want anybody to know that. And therefore, I was shame based. And I had to take away that power. And that took time, but I learned how to take away the power of the secret. I have no secrets. There's nothing
Oh
I
my
won't speak of.
gosh.
I don't have any secrets. I'm not afraid of you liking me. I'm not afraid of the repercussions or ramifications of you affecting my livelihood and or more importantly, my self-esteem, which is really manifest by my self-talk. So you can say this, this, and this about me, or not even like me, and I'm good. I'm good. And there's
Right.
many other lessons for the business person or for anyone, walking up and down or trying to. What I talk about is the vicissitudes of life, the ups and downs of life, and how to handle those.
Well, once again, thank you
Mhm.
so much for sharing that story. I mean, you do
Mhm.
have no secrets and no shame, and obviously you've done so much work to get to that point because not everybody has the, I would say, the ability to be so vulnerable and share these kinds of things. So was there like a specific moment in your journey that redefined your sense of purpose so that you could turn it around?
Yeah, there's two that I talk about. We talk about pivots. I had a pivot on September 22nd, 2004. And that was the day I was arrested for the last time. I was arrested for a sales of a $10 rock of crack cocaine. I was going to be sentenced to 6 years in the penitentiary, but I was threatened with habitual, which is 25 to life on my
Oh
next
my
felony. In fact,
gosh.
that's what awaits me on my next felony. But that's not going to happen. So I'm not
I can
concerned
tell
about
looking
that.
at you
Yeah,
now, that is just in your
never.
past.
No. So, but the thing that happened at that moment was I was arrested and I was waiting for literally the paddy wagon. And I remember being hemmed up, leaning forward because you're handcuffed behind your back as you await this transport. And I was crying profusely, but I'm smiling. And I remember the cop coming up to me wondering, why are you crying? Is everything all right? Are you hurt? Are you injured? Whatever. And I remember I told him, I'm crying because I'm going to live. I'm going to live. I can't do the streets. I can't do the streets because I can't. I will either commit suicide or somebody will probably kill me. But I can do prison. And you are giving me an opportunity again to take some time to change. And so I went into the penitentiary. About a month after I get arrested, I'm awaiting sentencing, and I'm lying on a bunk, and I had a conversation with God. That's the literal truth about it. So I had a conversation with God, or better yet, I listened to God. I think he'd been talking to me for a long time, but I listened, and ever since that moment, I've I've had courage. Let me put it that way. I'm not saying it's been easy. I have not made, or that I didn't make mistakes, because it's been 21 years, coming up on 21 years clean and sober, and also
Wow.
what we call contributing.
Congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
That's
Thank
huge.
you. Yeah, very appreciative. So let me just say this, and this is where a lot of people, so I talk to people with substance misuse or substance abuse problems. I talk to business people. I talk to corporate leaders. But we all have the same problems. We all have the same problems. They may manifest or show themselves differently, but we still have the same things that we need to solve for. And so I had to solve for four things going into prison. Most of the times, you don't have to solve for these many areas of concern. One, I had to solve for physical, because I came in there in very bad physical shape. So I did that. That's an easy one. Intellectual. Literally my brain had atrophied, at least my learning, because my vocabulary was very small on the streets. Let's put it that way. I
Right.
had some choice words I
I
used a
get
lot,
it.
but it was
Yeah.
small. So I really, let me put it this way. I remember going into prison because I didn't read it on the streets, but I went into prison, I got a book out, and I read a paragraph, and I remembered I could not remember the first sentence in the paragraph. I couldn't even absorb a whole paragraph worth of information. Okay. So I worked on the intellectual, and I ended up reading over 100 books a year. That's fine. Then there was the emotional, and this was a key one for me, because remember, I'm shame-based. Remember, I have secrets. Remember that I have self-talk that says that I am less than. Anyway, bottom line, I went to a counselor and did counseling for 2, 3 years. And then the other one is spiritual. And I looked at a lot of other spiritual avenues,
Yeah.
and I became very, very comfortable in my spiritual choice. And so I came out of prison a different person. It was a few years, but I came out a different person than the one I went in. And that's a key, is to look at, and this is probably one of the key components when I work with people, is what is truth? What's really going on? We can talk about an inventory. We can talk about journaling. We can talk about looking at past. But what is the truth? Where are you really at? Because I can't solve for a problem that is not articulated or brought into the light. We can't solve
Right.
for that. So
I
what a
love
lot of
that.
times, that's a difficulty when I'm working with individuals.
The truth, I mean, what comes across with you is you obviously are likable, so you don't have to worry about that.
Mhm.
It's your radical honesty. And how has that helped you rebuild trust? And how can leaders embrace it without losing credibility or control? Because I find that vulnerability is such a key word these days, but at the same time, people are somewhat afraid of being radically honest, like you are.
So I say this, I'd say this to everyone: sing your song, sing your song. You don't have to sing like me. You don't have to go up in front of 1,000 people and talk about the things that you can talk about with no sense of embarrassment or shame. That's me. I've done
Right.
a lot of work on this. I've gone into those dark rooms, turned the lights on, observe what was in those rooms, understand that scene within those dark rooms, and then I can go back out and I'm good. Okay. I can do that. No problem. But sing your song. But going back to the question that you asked, the importance is truth. And remember, there's different truths. First of all, there's truth with a capital T. That's of God. Okay. And however you define that, that's a capital T truth. Then there's truth that we articulate, or that we espouse, or that we communicate externally. Then there's truth internally. Right now, and I'll just say it, Lisa, you're having a conversation with yourself. There's always, we talk to ourselves all day long, all the,
Right.
And in fact, I always say it's probably the most important conversation is your self-talk. And how do we change that? Because you can say things, coming out. But let's talk about leadership and let's talk about leaders. One of the most important parts about the truth with leaders is that there has to be an alignment or congruence with what comes out of your mouth and your actions.
Yes.
And we call it integrity. I
Yes.
love the term congruence. That means alignment. Okay. Is your words congruent with your actions? And that's a difficult one for a lot of people.
That is huge. I agree.
Mhm. So if that's just one of many things I would say to anybody, but you got to go back down to your fundamental truth. And then again, what is your fundamental truth? What do you live by? What's your vertical alignment? So I speak about vertical alignment. And what vertical alignment means is how do you make decisions? And what you do is you have a hierarchy of where you run your decisions by. So when I make decisions, and I'm talking about 1% or 0.5, because I don't need to make a decision to know what side of the road to drive down. I don't need to make a decision to know how to bench press 225 pounds off of my chest. I just do it. Okay.
Right.
But there will be points in your life, many times profound points in your life where you need to make a decision. And how do you make that decision? So I teach and I live by vertical alignment. Number one is God. However you may define that spiritual essence, you make the decision, what is God's will? Number one. Number two, and this is what I do, is what is best for my wife, period. What is best for my wife?
I love it.
My partner,
That's
not
number
me,
two.
not my children, not my grandkids, not my road dogs or my
So your wife.
buddies. My wife comes too. And then there's a big space and family. And then I'm probably fifth down the line.
Wow.
But that's vertical alignment.
Vertical alignment. Well, I could talk to you all day, but
Yeah, I
unfortunately, it's
know.
a short podcast. So, where can people find more about your speaking and becoming Ken and all the good things?
You can go to kenmillerspeaks.com. You can also, I love contact on LinkedIn. So I'm Ken Miller 84. That's all you need. It's just LinkedIn, Ken Miller 84. You can go to Becoming Ken at Amazon. It's my new book. Has quite a bit in there. And then also, and I just put it out there, if you want, you can email me at ken@denalifsp.com. And many times I'll do podcast. I'll put my phone number in. I have a cell phone. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. You can call
I
me.
love that about you, Ken. It is obvious that you're brave. Well, thank you for being a fabulous guest. It was wonderful meeting with you. I'm going to connect with you on LinkedIn.
Thank you. I appreciate it.